If your shoulders are hurting from bench press, you need to watch this video as I'll be sharing important strategies that can quite literally change the game. The first and most important thing is to stop grabbing the bar so wide. You are getting more internal shoulder rotation right here. So unless you have exceptionally long arms, I do not recommend going beyond the rings. Might be able to lift a bit more weight this way, but the shoulder health implications are not worth it. As long as you're in this position, you should be okay. I recommend the close grip, not where your fingers are in the smooths, but shoulder width apart, or thumb away from the smooths. These tend to be the two best positions for most lifters with average arm length. Ideally, you want your wrists and elbows to be vertical. The closer they are to diagonal, the worse off your shoulders will feel. I also want you to envision pulling the bar apart and keeping those elbows in. Don't flare out or bring the bar to your throat, upper chest area. In, tight, roll the bar to your chest, pressing outwards, straight line, and a little bit back. This is the best form for maximizing your tightness and overall stability. Your shoulders will feel so much better, mark my words. Now sometimes guys will get shoulder pain from touch and go reps, and it's not that this is bad, just that they're bouncing. And when they bounce, it tends to shift the weight to one side a bit, which can strain your shoulder and pec. So killing two birds with one stone in a negative way. So what I'm gonna recommend today is pausing your repetitions for 1-2 seconds maximum. You don't have to hold it for 3, 1, 2, 3. Instead, bring it down, halt it, come back up. That's it. Just to eliminate momentum and the possible risk of shifting to one side. The pausing forces you to maintain perfect form, everything from the eccentric to the concentric, because everything is kept tight. And all the cues that I talked about before are further enhanced with this position instead of just bouncing off your chest. But let me say this, once you get used to pausing, even when you do touch and go, it's hard to lose that cue of being tight. It gets ingrained within your very being. So what we're really doing is instilling the correct movement patterns. This prevents muscular imbalances in the long term and teaches you how to press in a way that's legal in competition, which is always a nice bonus. I should also mention that you'll likely lose a good 15 to 30 pounds on this variation, which allows you to get more or less weight, also correcting the bottom weakness that is so common in raw benches. This will teach your pecs how to explode from that dead stop. Now, if you still struggle to get tight, there's another thing you could do. Reverse band rows on the bench. This is arguably the most specific row that you can do before heavy benching. I recommend 3 sets of 20 or 4 sets of 25. Once you're nice and warmed up and you take off those bands, you'll be in the perfect position every single time. And for this, you can actually go a bit wider since it's a row, not a press. You'll actually smash your upper back quite nicely. But I would personally recommend using the same pulling position as your standard bench. This way everything is nice and locked in once you start piling on those loads. Now, if you don't want to use this variation, that's okay. Any row will do just fine, but I personally recommend using bands. This way we get that peak contraction, which will help the most at the bottom of a bench press. So band rows are the next best thing you could do. Quick and easy to set up, and you get access to the neutral grip, which is always a great thing if you don't have a Swiss bar. Oh, and besides the whole warming up thing, I strongly recommend treating your rows very seriously. In a perfect world, you would do double the volume compared to the pushing. But I understand that not a lot of you are going to do that. So instead, try to get in at least 1 extra pull per session or higher frequency rows on the off days. Rows are your #1 tool against anterior loading. Never neglect them or you will be sorry. Anyway, since we got this set up, I should also mention that reverse band bench press is a great way of minimizing shoulder pain. Definitely not the best thing for raising your raw bench, but we do have to admit that feels excellent at the bottom, which is where most of the strainage occurs. The strength curve is pretty much inverted. As you get to the bottom, the bands are pulling up, so they actually act as a spotter. It would be like having a gym bro pull on the bar for you. This feels so good, and also the triceps get a bit overloaded at the top as well, since you can lift heavier loads. Oh, and if your shoulders are really trashed, you can also do this with a slingshot. This is giving you insane bottom support. It's pretty much all triceps at this point, which I don't really recommend if I'm being honest with you. I've done this in the past, but unless you have really fucked up shoulders, I wouldn't really do this. However, the slingshot by itself is an excellent tool that I cannot recommend enough. This will 100% keep your shoulders safe while teaching correct form. First of all, it forces you to bring your arms apart, which is one of the cues I talked about at the beginning. And secondly, As you lower the bar, notice how the slingshot allows you to get your elbows in more closely. It basically teaches you how to bench. And it's like having a second pair of weaker pecs. The strength curve is modified a bit, similar to the reverse band bench press, but not totally the same exercise. This will give you much better carryover, pretty much instantaneously. If you did nothing but slingshot bench, got to 455, you'd probably have a raw 405, no problem, even if you never did that variation. Now, if you don't want to do any of those variations, that's okay. I do have one final solution for you. The mini decline bench press. Put the bench on top of 1 to 2 inch mats and you should be in the optimal decline position. Check it out, it's not too steep, which will give you much better carryover to the regular bench press. You see, it barely looks any different, so stop wasting your time with partial rep bench presses. This reduces the range of motion very slightly, but it's still enough to get an amazing chest workout, and some would say it's even better. It's similar to having your butt up in the air, so expect to gain a good 15 pounds from this variation while keeping those shoulders in an amazing position. I know you're gonna love this exercise. It really is the closest thing to the regular bench press. And with that said, those are all my major tips for today's video. If you want a part 2, let me know. But in the meantime, I want you to experiment with everything I showed you because I know that in the next couple months, your shoulders will feel that much better. So try it out, give me your feedback in the comment section, and enjoy the pain-free gains.